Well, in 1919, Harry Stutz left the company that he founded. Like many entrepreneurs, he couldn't hack dealing with investors. Times haven't changed much. So what did he do? He didn't leave the automotive industry. He went to Indy, his first passion, racing. 1923, he enters two cars that he scratch built. Was he a good racer, a good builder? Absolutely. It was the first time in Indy history that he put a car on the pole, and it was also the first time the pole-winning car also won the race. Well, what happened to the Stutz factory? Alan Ryan took over the company. He was a young Wall Street investor. He had bought enough shares that eventually he gained control of the company. What he didn't understand is he had to spend money to make money. With almost $63 million in debt and only $600,000 in assets, Ryan left the company or got bought out by another fellow named Charles Schwab. Now you remember Charles Schwab ran a little company called Carnegie Steel. He was the first guy to be paid $1 million a year salary. Later he formed his own company, Bethlehem Steel, made a tidy fortune there. Well, he understood the car business and invested $1 million into the Stutz factory in R&D. What they developed was this, the pinnacle of touring for the time, the DV32. This is a typical classic, especially a high-end classic like a Duesenberg or a Packard. Any of those cars were exceptional driving cars, exceptionally well-engineered cars for their era. What made this a little bit unique is in 1930, when Cadillac started the multi-cylinder wars going to a V16, Packard followed with the twin six, the 12 cylinders. Stutz kept going with the 8-cylinder, but what they did to get that horsepower is they actually created a hemispherical head, two cams on top of the cylinder running 4 valves per cylinder, therefore giving it the DV32 designation. What was kind of cool about that is 156 horsepower at 8 cylinders. That was almost unheard of at the time. The other thing that's really cool is the way the camshafts worked off the valves. There were no rollers, there were no push rods, there was nothing in between. Pretty tricky piece to set up. Makes for a nice, fairly high horsepower piece in what you might call a sports car of the era. Now, as far as drivability, it sits on a 145-inch chassis, so it gives you a nice, smooth feeling. 18-inch wheels gives you that standard sort of classic feel. You look out over the hood, and you feel like you're an expensive car. And it was an expensive car. This car was almost $7,000 back in 1933. Now, braking, it was one of the first cars to have hydraulic brakes. Something a little bit unique, but then again, all the high-end cars of the era did have that. You never think of one of these big cars as a sports car, but it's one of the few cars from that era that actually had a tachometer in it. A lot of this car, especially the motor components of this car, were race-driven. Well, the DV32 Stutz is all about motor, usually. This one's all about body as well. It's the only Waterhouse Victoria body ever put on a Stutz. The quality of the restoration is beautiful. The paint is perfect, the chrome's perfect, the interior's perfect. These things were truly a work of art. Lift up the hood, and I'll tell you, it's beautiful under there. It was really the first Hemi ever built. Now, what's a car like this worth? Well, considering the fella drove this car down all the way down the East Coast to Amelia Island to the concourse here, you know it runs perfectly well as well. So, value again? Well, for a lot of people out there that don't understand this, let me put it into perspective. 71 Hemi Cuda, sort of the modern Hemi, well, it's worth $350,000 to $450,000. This car here, worth the same. Just depends what area it came from. Hemis are worth big money.